If you are a developer, you've probably heard a lot of answers to the question, when should I start marketing my game? When this is asked on Reddit or at game dev events, most of the time the answer from other fellow developers is as soon as possible. You can do it as soon as your game comes out by posting trailers and content updates, or you could do it while you're working on your game through development live streams or community management. Now, both of those options are good recommendations, but what if I tell you that there is a type of marketing that you can do before you develop your game? In my journey of developing my own game, working with a publisher and ending up becoming a publisher myself, I've interacted with a lot of developers. Just like most people who start out in this industry, I began my journey with some foolish thoughts such as, if I make a good enough game, it won't need any promotion, it will sell itself. Since then, I grew out of that mindset and I've learned to understand and respect the importance of marketing. However, since I started collaborating with other developers and published their titles, it breaks my heart to see a non-trivial amount of people from this industry still disregard the importance of marketing to this day. It's especially difficult to see developers work on their game for years, and after they release it on Steam, they realize that there are 30 more games that came out in that exact same day. One day later, 30 more games on top, and so on and so forth, very quickly burying all the effort they've put into development because they've neglected marketing. And the thing is, I remember being terrified of this thought myself when I was about to release my own game. So aside from the tons of resources out there on how to market your game, I'd like to propose a more novel way of doing this, which is baking marketing at the design document level. And what I mean by this is that you should take marketing concepts into consideration when you lay down the design foundation of your game. In my efforts of researching and identifying the types of design doc marketing, I've ended up gathering my thoughts into these 4 categories, starting with design that involves other players. This type of design is all about sharing an experience with other players, be them strangers or longtime friends. It's basically the equivalent of a referral code that you can pass on to someone else. Or at the store level, it's a simple buy one get one free type of deal that you can easily set up in most game distributing platforms out there. However, if you push this concept a bit further at the design level, this can take the form of an achievement that unlocks only if you play a game with someone that you have in your friends list. Another design alternative of this is the ad hoc sharing mode. Back in the PSP era, a lot of games would allow you to send a limited demo version of your game wirelessly to another player's PSP. This would allow them to either try out the game themselves or play a local Wi-Fi multiplayer session with you, all without having to buy the game again. Sadly, this way of sharing a preview of the game is no longer popular, with only a handful of developers still practicing it. And I kinda miss it, so I think more developers should consider this. But the participation type of design doc marketing is a rather superficial one though, so the next one is a more involved process, and it's all about measuring the player's skill in creative ways. A tradition that is prevalent even today is the measurement of player skill through a high score number. Back in the early days, arcade games like Seawolf popularized the term high score, and later on games allowed players to save their initials next to their score. They became such a staple in pop culture that aside from documentaries about someone's high score, even Seinfeld had an entire episode about this topic. Now, at one point in time, a programmer somewhere figured out that while no one is playing the game, the arcade cabinet could display a little gameplay demo. And in that demo loop, they could also include a list of the history of highest scoring players with their initials next to their scores. This is marketing at the game code level, where the arcade cabinet acts as a broadcasted message asking anyone passing in front of it, can you do any better? Later on, the internet became a thing, and those high scores were no longer limited to the small audience of players passing in front of an arcade cabinet. Zach Barth, who is indirectly responsible for the existence of Minecraft, has taken a very novel and creative approach to online high scores. He told me that when he started off making Flash games, players would create forum threads sharing their highest scores as a form of asynchronous competition of sorts. That was one of the many factors that made him realize that traditional leaderboards don't really work, and it led him to design the histogram score. If you've played any of his games such as Infinifactory or SHENZHEN I, you will find yourself building various pipelines to achieve your goal. And once you do so, your creation is graded through various lenses like efficiency, speed, and footprint. These are histograms, representing an objective measurement of your solution. However, the graph behind it represents how other players performed in this exact same level. This gives you an instant frame of reference of how you scored compared to everyone else who owns this game. And the beauty of it is that you don't even have to worry about cheaters because the nature of the histogram itself averages those anomalies out, resulting in a smooth curve in the end. But the thing is, I'm not sure I would call this design doc marketing because it requires you to own the game in order to get to this point. On top of that, Zach never intended this to be a marketing tool to begin with. But there is another thing that his games have in their score screen, and it's this button right here. It's a built-in way to capture a moment from your gameplay and share it as a short little animated image online. This is a very important and powerful tool to have in your game, even though players could achieve the same thing with third-party software. Actually, that's exactly how Zach got inspired to implement this feature in the first place, after seeing a player do this manually. However, it is very unlikely that a majority of players have the hindsight or setup required in order to easily capture moments that have already happened on their own without the game offering that feature for them, at least not on PC. I am sure you've seen these little animations online before, and that's how I stumbled upon Fez, through this short clip that perfectly encapsulates the spirit and main mechanic of the game. An interesting implementation of this is in the insane shoot-'em-up My Friend Pedro, where there is an invisible style score that ticks up whenever you do something cool, like taking down an enemy with your skateboard or ricocheting bullets off of a frying pan. At the end of every level, that invisible style score is used to determine the highlight of your playstyle so the game can capture it and allow you to share it online with one click. In a world where attention spans are becoming shorter and shorter, this is such an important feature that in the past decade, the only major addition to all three console controllers has been the share button. So sharing both high scores and little cool moments are crucial to a game's success. But what if we keep pushing the concept of sharing a bit further? I'm actually very excited to talk about this one because this is my personal favorite type of design doc marketing, and it has everything to do with content creation. If you've played any game by Media Molecule such as Little Big Planet or Dreams, you've probably realized that their design philosophy is all about helping players become creators, which is written directly on their website. This is known in the industry as user-generated content, which is a term I fucking hate, so I'll refer to it as player-generated content, and I hope you don't mind. These are games designed around the concept of encouraging the players to transform their ideas into in-game content, and when it's done right, it can create a self-sustainable content ecosystem. Small chunks of this design philosophy can be seen in any kind of customizable aspect of a game, be it a character creator, an in-game painting tool, or even building your own base. I have made an entire video about this topic alone, and you know where to find the link. Now, creating quality content, however, is no easy task, so there has been an ongoing effort to make this process as streamlined as possible. Some games promise the ability to scan real-life elements that you can use in-game. I mean, remember this one? And although still being used in some games today, it's a rather scarce feature that mostly results in inside jokes between friends. With a little extra development time, you could also turn a level editor meant for internal use into an additional feature for your game. Edmund Macmillan has a tradition of releasing the unpolished level editor for most of the games he created, claiming that I always release my level editors, but usually don't support them that much more than the editor I use to make the games with. Taking it a step further, a level editor can be polished into a much smoother experience with a proper UI, which is what I tried to do with the level editor of my own game, Move or Die. I even went as far as making custom sound effects for it in the hopes of making it more inviting to players and encourage them to use it. Messing around with the Warcraft 3's level editor was one of the first steps I took towards game development. However, there is another more involved way of allowing for player-generated content in your game, and that is through modding. With the entry barrier of creating games from scratch being so low nowadays, modding has become less and less popular, with players opting for starting their own original projects rather than modifying existing ones. Which I think is a shame, given that with a huge influx of DRM, online features, and games as a service business models, developers spend more time and effort locking down their games rather than opening them up for modifications. Sadly, it's an incredibly rare sight to find an exposed texture or sound file in games nowadays. Some of the greatest games out there started out as mods, like Counter-Strike, The Stanley Parable, PUBG, Killing Floor, Dota, DayZ, Team Fortress. You get the point. Modding is an amazing thing that we should keep alive, and it's also how I got into this industry by creating my own voice packs for Worms Armageddon. I try to encourage every developer I talk with to allow for modding in their games, as it's something I try to keep alive myself by keeping most of Move or Die's assets exposed in the installation folder. I even threw some source files wherever made sense, and you can go check. I even left you a little hello message over there. And as a result, games that are mod-friendly benefit from a significantly longer lifespan, given that there is a community to keep them alive. There are cases where developers stop supporting a game only for the community to step in and keep the game alive through new bug-fixing patches and sometimes even content. I mean, look at the entire genre of PC rhythm games. Oh, and if you worry that players won't be creating mods for your game, consider documenting the process and creating a guide to give them a starting point, as well as maybe take inspiration from earlier in this video and consider adding an achievement for publishing a mod. Just a thought. And finally, there is one more type of design doc marketing worth mentioning, even though it's my least favorite. Towards the end of 2018, there was a moment where a majority of game journalists were dead set focused on horse testicles. When the news broke that in Red Dead Redemption 2, horse testicles changed their size if they touched snow, an avalanche of articles and videos were published examining and confirming the story. Now, brushing over the topic's crudeness, I think this is an important thing to look at and learn from, because those articles weren't just a small blip in time. With minimal efforts, I managed to find articles spanning multiple months covering this exact topic. And the irony is that within Red Dead Redemption's insane mechanical complexity, a small feature that probably took an afternoon to implement was what got this much attention. Back in the day, violence was the main taboo, where games like Mortal Kombat and Doom were getting a lot of mass media attention due to their extreme gore. It was such a heated debate that there was even a Congress hearing on the topic, and games like Mortal Kombat are responsible for the creation of the ESRB rating to begin with. Sadly, nowadays this is something more often used in dishonest ways, because as opposed to the craftsmanship required to create quality content, baking controversy in your game is sadly easier and tends to get more attention. Which is exactly why I'm not a fan of seeing developers misuse the power of including highly debated themes within their games. However, there are exceptions, and developers that use themes like these to push boundaries and tell compelling stories. Games like Papers, Please by Lucas Pope and Genital Jousting developed by Free Lives, amongst others, and we should give those games the attention they deserve. Now, there are a handful of other design decisions that could heavily influence the marketing success of your game, such as visual design, creative livestream integrations, and even encouraging machinimas. I mean, remember those? But I'll talk about those in another videos. Maybe we can even discuss these together in the comments below, but listen, you've been working on your game for a long time. You don't want to put it out there and find out it's gonna be buried in a sea of shitty games in less than a week. So, even though most of the time a game's success is determined by external factors, maybe this time around, if you play your cards just right, your game's success can be baked straight into your game design document. You know how these end segments go, and you know what you have to do to keep these videos free of sponsor spots.
Must feed the algorithm.
Also, as promised, I will be down in the comments below with some extra thoughts on design doc marketing that I didn't get to fit in this video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the comments.